Hello. Back in the early 90s, I always wanted a sound sampler for my Amiga computer. I was always interested in audio and I wanted to be able to record sound onto the computer to experiment with it. Unlike today's computers, a feature like this simply wasn't included as standard and required specialised external hardware, like for example the Techno Sound Turbo, and I'll cover these in a future video. Before I saved up enough money to be able to buy one of those, I spotted this issue of CU Amiga. And inside it contained a guide showing you how to make your own, so naturally being interested in electronics, I wanted to give it a go. Now of course, much like the pages of programming code you often found in those magazines of that era, my DIY sound sampler didn't work either. Sadly, I never knew why, and I even took it to my local MacLeod electronics store and they couldn't find the fault either. At some point I threw it away, but for some reason I held on to the analog to digital chip used by it, probably because it was quite expensive. So in this video we're going to go back some 32 years and I'm going to have another go at building it. So let's start by having a look inside the magazine, and this is issue 39 from May of 1993, which included a special supplement halfway through. The first covering a whole load of Amos related tutorials. Weirdly enough, I don't remember even noticing that section. But it's the one after that that had me interested, the Amiga Workshop, issue 5, because flicking through we end up on a 3-page article about building your own sound sampler, so let's take a closer look. Like all guides, it starts off with a disclaimer and warning. We don't care about that. It also shows 2 pictures of the completed build on a strip board. One shows the front and the other one shows the back, which is useful as you then can work out where you need to drill some holes. All of the wires coming off this board go to a 25-pin connector that you plug in the parallel port. The next page describes how this is a fairly generic design that should work with most sound sampling software, and then goes to explain the theory of operation in a rather rudimentary way. The majority of the work is handled by the ZN448E analog to digital converter, a fairly common device back in the day, although obsolete by today's standards, and technically not even made anymore, although you seem to still be able to order them from China. Essentially, the Amiga sends out a signal on pin 1, the strobe pin, which goes into pin 4 on the chip. This starts the conversion of a single sample, and when complete it outputs the corresponding value on its 8 data pins, which are connected to the 8 data pins on the parallel port. Easy, right? The Mac seems to have things in a funny order. There's a box here that explains how to use the sampler and explains the settings that might make it more compatible with different software. Over the page we get a little explanation of what an analog to digital converter actually does, along with some construction information and suggested alterations. You also get a list of required parts, and some of you may notice something a little bit strange. C1 is listed as 7 microfarads. Well, that value just doesn't exist. I've no idea what I would have put in there in its place back in the day, but if I pull up the datasheet for the chip, you can find a reference circuit diagram for it, and you can see that the capacitor is labelled as 4.7 microfarads. Maybe someone missed a 4. I've no idea, however, if this is why mine didn't work. Lastly, they also talk about future alterations they plan to make in later issues. Now, because I never got this to work, I never bothered looking into any of those. I wonder if they did publish any changes. Now, back then, I did build it on stripboard or Veroboard, and whilst I could do that, I decided this time I was going to digitise the circuit diagram, making sure to keep it exactly like the original, and then design a PCB for it. This will make it much easier to build, and to get it built, you can use this video's sponsor, PCBWay, for this. As not only will they make this PCB for me, I'm sure you're aware that they offer a wide range of PCB manufacturing options. They also provide an assembly service too, which takes the hassle and difficulty out of surface mount soldering. Should you wish to have a case made for this, I could also use their 3D printing services and have a professional case printed for me. If you're looking for a project to build, you should check out their shared projects library, which has literally thousands of projects ready for you to click and order. And if I search for just the keyword Amiga, then over 400 different projects appear, ranging from keyboard adapters to monitor testers. So make sure you check out PCBWay, and if you sign up today, you'll get a $5 coupon off your first order. So check out that link in the video description. Thank you PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Whilst I'm waiting for that PCB to arrive, I thought I'd explain the theory about how some analog to digital converters actually work, which also explains why they have a maximum sampling frequency. And you can kind of figure this out by looking at the block diagram in the datasheet for the chip. The first thing you'll notice is that in the middle of the chip there's a digital to analog converter. Doesn't that seem strange? Well, I'll explain how it works. And I'll start by showing two of these chips at the same time to make it more obvious what's going on. And each one will receive a different input voltage. Upon receiving a Start Now signal on the external pin, the successive approximation register resets to 10000000, or 128. This is basically the chip's first guess. This value is then fed into the digital to analog converter. Now, this chip has an internal clock which is derived from external components on the board, and on the next clock cycle, this value is then compared to the actual incoming analog signal. If the input signal is less than that guess, the most significant bit is reset to 0, else it's left alone. The chip then sets the next bit to 1 and repeats the process, checking to see if the input signal is greater or less than the guess. Each time the chip moves along a bit, it gets a little bit closer and closer to the input voltage, and finally, after the process has repeated a total of 8 times, the conversion is complete. The binary representation of this analog signal is output. Now, because this process isn't instantaneous, the chip has a maximum sampling frequency, well beyond what the Amiga was capable of playing back in the day. And I guess that's why this chip was so popular. Because with a small change to the circuit, you could use this same chip to sample from the left channel and then the right channel, giving you stereo. I guess it's funny really, to make an analog to digital converter you also need the reverse too. I suppose it's probably making it a fairly simple design, and I wonder if modern equivalents still work the same way. Anyway, the PCBs have finally arrived, so let's solder one up. Right, the moment of truth is here. Does this version actually work? Now, I have actually no idea if the chip, the ZN44AT, actually still works, or even if it ever worked, so I've also got some backup chips from China too. And this chip technically doesn't exist anymore, so I hope these aren't fake. This time, however, I have all the tools needed to test the chip out and understand how it's supposed to work. So, let's get an Amiga set up and try this out. So, I'm going to try and use the sampler built into ProTracker first. This is the first thing I remember trying on my original version, so it's probably a good place to start. Well, it's not sampling anything, so maybe either this is incompatible or it just doesn't work. Now, in the magazine they showed it working in Audition 4, so let's try that. Well, this is a bad start, that's just locked up. I'm not entirely sure why. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that chip actually works, so I'm going to swap it with one of the ones I have from China. These look fairly genuine, all having different date codes. And trying ProTracker again? Still nothing. I'll try Audition again. I get to the menu this time and select generic from the sampler, and then it locks up again. So this isn't looking very promising. I don't understand why Audition is crashing, so I'm going to retest this on a different Amiga, just to make sure it's not a hardware fault. And this time, I'm going to use the slightly newer version 1.01 of Audition 4. So, booting it up, and first choosing the type of sampler as generic, just like the documentation says, and then we head into the sampler. Then I choose to show the oscilloscope views. And finally click to monitor the audio, and still nothing. So, this is as far as I got when I built this some 35 years ago. It just didn't work, and I couldn't understand why, and yes, I know there's audio going in. Now, we have an advantage I didn't have back then. Aside from better electronics knowledge, we also have the internet available, so I'm able to have a look at the next month's issue and see if there were any mistakes that were corrected. And here it is, the stereo version. Funny given the mono version doesn't seem to work, and the stereo version is kind of wired exactly how I expected. They use a second chip, an audio switch, to toggle between the two channels using pin 12, paper out, and pin 13, select, on the parallel port. But look here, a correction. Remember earlier when I mentioned about a component being marked as 7 microfarads and how that didn't exist? Well, that's what they're talking about here. Now, I fitted a 4.7 microfarad capacitor as per the datasheet, but they're suggesting I should use a 47 microfarad capacitor. So let's make that change. Well, that was a bit more of a pain than I thought it would be. That'll teach me to put a massive ground plane on the board. Anyway, let's see if it made any difference, and I'll start by trying Audition again. And it's crashing like before. Strange, I did try it a few times and it still crashed, so I'll try ProTracker. And, well, nothing there. Let's swap out that chip again, just in case. Now trying Audition again? Well, it's not looking up this time. Maybe we'll get somewhere. But, no, it still doesn't work. Now what's strange is back in the day, a guy in MacLeod actually checked the circuit for me against the magazine, and he literally checked every connection to make sure I'd done this correctly. For my version, I've built a PCB-based version of the circuit diagram and it still doesn't work. So what could be wrong? Well, there's several possibilities, so I'm going to probe a few of the pins. First, I'm going to probe on this pin. This is supposed to be the clock signal and it should be around 30 kHz according to the magazine. But this, well, I know you can't see that, but it's coming in at 287 Hz. That's way too slow, and to be honest, I'm not surprised. If we go back to the circuit diagram and look at pin 3 and trace it back, it goes to this 470 nanofarad capacitor and then to ground. But if we look at the datasheet, it shows 4 ways to provide this clock signal. So this is method A with a fixed capacitor. The problem is the chosen value. The graph here shows the clock speed generated compared to the capacitor selected. Well, with 470 nanofarads, we're actually off the right hand side of the graph. For 30 kHz, they're going to need to be something much smaller. I wonder if they meant to pick 4.7 nanofarads rather than 470. Now there's a comment about decreasing this to improve quality, but I doubt they meant that much. So anyway, I'm going to swap that component with 4.7 nanofarads and see what happens. But before I do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters who make videos like this possible. And if you'd like to support me in making future videos, then follow the links in the video description. So I've swapped out the capacitor. Let's check what clock speed we get now. Around 23.9 kHz, that's much better. Let's see if it made any difference in the software. Firstly, loading ProTracker, and wow, yeah, that's working. A bit loud, or distorted, or something. If you don't recognise that piece of music, it's actually Pattern Skank by Hoffman. That's not a distortion though, because the volume's too loud. That's some kind of corruption or something. Let's try Audition. And, well, that's also making that horrible noise. I'm now just probing around the circuit to see if I can spot anything strange. Still, that's progress. Now I have a thought about that crackling. You see, whilst the chip has a busy signal to tell the computer when the analog to digital process has finished, there's no connection to this on the Amiga. Now I measured the clock rate about 23 kHz. This would mean it would take around 300 microseconds to produce a sample. However, I suspect the Amiga is expecting to receive that value much quicker. So what if I up the frequency the chip's running at, maybe into the megahertz range? Looking at that graph again and extending it up and roughly guessing where that line might have gone, and it does have a slight curve to it, if I pick a 20 picofarad capacitor instead of a 4.7 nanofarad capacitor, then I should have a frequency of around 1.8 megahertz, I guess, so I'll make that change. Now, hoping that Amiga Bill's boom sticker isn't a representative of what's to follow, I'm loading up Audition again. To start with, I've disconnected the audio, and once in the sampler you can see straight away something's a little bit different. There's no noise, just a flat line. I know that's kinda how the original one looked. Before I plug the audio in, I just want to remeasure the frequency that the sampler is now clocking at. And it's a whopping 1.6 MHz, so I didn't make too bad of a guess there. Compared to the original 287 Hz and from my previous 23.9 kHz, this is quite the upgrade. But does it make any difference? I'm going to fast forward through here me checking various other outputs, although this one is quite interesting. This is the negative voltage being generated via a diode pump circuit. It didn't really look right before, but it seems to look a lot better this time. So anyway, let's hit play and see what happens. And boom, it works! I mean, it doesn't sound the best quality in the world, a little bit distorted or noisy, but nevertheless, that is working. I have to say, I'm quite relieved. That's a 35-year-old mystery, and what's more, the original chip I saved from all those years ago still works. So let's test it in Pro Tracker too. I wonder if the sampler is compatible with it. And, well, yes it is. Amazing! I'm still not sure why it's a little crackly. I did try swapping out various resistors and capacitors and it still made no difference. The only time it stopped was when I biased the incoming audio so it didn't cross over the 0 point, which is a little weird, but at least it's working much better. Amazing! It finally works after all these years. It's crazy that just one component value was wrong and that caused all of the problems, moving from a 470 nanofarad capacitor right up to 20 picofarads. I wonder if that was a misprint and it should have been something like 47 or 470 picofarads instead. It's strange that no one picked up on this in the next issue either. Maybe it went to print too quickly before any feedback had been received. Surely I couldn't have been the only one building this, right? If you built this, let me know and put your comments about your build in the comments below. I did have a quick look at the third instalment of this circuit in which they used it to measure light levels instead, but still no mention of any mistakes. So anyway, that's the DIY sound sampler from back in the day. However, you don't need to build this one because there's quite a few modern open source Amiga sound samplers available, but I'll leave them up to you to discover. In the next video, we're going to take a look at some of the commercially available sound samplers from back then, so make sure you hit subscribe or you'll miss them. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.